The world of AI is moving at lightning speed, right? But now, global regulators are slamming on the brakes. They're stepping into the ring to draw some hard lines in the sand, and it is setting the stage for one heck of a collision.
So, what's this big collision all about? Well, it really boils down to one massive question. A question that honestly affects every single one of us who makes something or just reads or watches something online. And it's a question that is about to become a huge regulatory battleground.
And guess what? That battle has officially kicked off. The European Commission just launched a brand new and, believe me, very significant antitrust investigation. And their target? Yep, it's Google. Specifically, they're looking at how Google uses all that online content. We're talking news articles, journalism, even YouTube videos to train its powerful AI models.
Now, let's be super clear. This is not just some little regulatory slap on the wrist. No way. This investigation is all about setting the fundamental rules of the road for the entire AI era. This is foundational stuff.
You know, we hear all the time about AI being trained on the internet. But what does that actually mean? Well, this whole conflict really comes down to a few critical questions. First off, who actually owns the rights to all that data that's making these AI models worth trillions? Second, who gets a fair cut? And that leads to the biggest headache of all. In a world where AI is moving this fast, can you even have a fair system? Or is it just impossible to have both fairness and super fast innovation? Well, the EU seems to think they are impossible to have at the same time, at least right now. Officially, the Commission is investigating if Google broke EU competition rules. But let's translate that from legal speak. In plain English, they think Google is cheating, that it's stacking the deck in its own favor.
And they've laid out their case with three core allegations. First, they're saying Google is forcing publishers into these unfair take-it-or-leave-it deals that totally undervalue their work. Second, that Google is giving itself a special VIP pass to that content, getting it better, faster, and cheaper than any competitor could. And third, and this one is huge, is that Google is using its control over all this data to kneecap rival AI developers right out of the gate. And look, this isn't some abstract legal theory we're talking about. The investigation is aimed at features you've definitely seen, probably even today. You know when you search for something and Google just gives you the answer right there at the top in a little summary box? Yeah, that's what this is about. We're talking AI overviews and AI mode. So here's the crazy part. Those handy little summaries are built using content that Google scrapes from publishers. But the publishers feel they aren't being properly paid for it. It's like they're being forced to hand over the bricks to Google, who then builds a giant wall that stops people from ever visiting their website. They are literally feeding their biggest competitor for free. But how is Google pulling this off? Well, this next point is the absolute heart of the entire investigation. It all comes down to one word: leverage. It's about how Google uses its immense power in one area to get exactly what it wants in another. The Commission basically said that for publishers, saying no isn't a real option. I mean, think about it. If your website disappears from Google search, you're toast. You basically cease to exist online. So Google can effectively waltz in and say, hey, if you want that precious search traffic that keeps your lights on, then you have to let us use your content for our AI. It's a classic power play, an offer you can't refuse.
And this sets up a massive philosophical showdown. On one side, you have the EU's competition commissioner, Teresa Rivera, who came out and said, progress cannot come at the expense of the principles at the heart of our societies. In other words, they're picking fairness over speed. Of course, Google shot right back. A spokesperson argued that this whole thing risks stifling innovation in a market that is more competitive than ever. Now, to really get what's happening here, you have to zoom out, because this probe into Google, it's not a one-off thing. It is just one move in a much bigger, highly coordinated offensive the EU is waging against pretty much every major US tech company.
I mean, just look at the timeline from the last few months. It's been absolutely relentless. Back in September, Google got hammered with a huge ad tech fine. Just last week, a probe was opened into Meta over WhatsApp data. This week, X got fined for transparency. And now, bam, this new Google AI probe. See the pattern? This is systematic.
And let's not forget the kind of money we're talking about here. That previous fine against Google, that wasn't pocket change. It was almost 3 billion euros. And it was for a similar accusation, using its dominance in one area to warp the market in another.
What's so fascinating is watching the EU's strategy unfold. It's like they've got this whole regulatory toolbox. For giants like Google and Meta, They're using the big antitrust hammer. But for X, they pulled out a completely different tool, consumer protection rules, to go after the design of its blue checkmark. They're showing they can attack these companies on economics, design, and data all at once.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. What does all of this actually mean for the future of the internet, for how content gets made and how it's valued? Let's talk about what's really, truly at stake.
All right, here's what you absolutely need to take away from this. First, the EU is making a very clear choice. They're prioritizing fairness over the breakneck speed of AI innovation. Second, Google's real weak spot here is that link they've created between search traffic and AI training. Third, the EU is trying to write the rulebook for AI now, before a few companies lock everything down permanently. And finally, remember this whole showdown could completely change how we value content online.
And that leaves us with one final, huge, mind-bending question. If the EU actually succeeds here, will it force the creation of a totally new, separate marketplace just for AI content? I mean, think about that for a second. An entirely new market where digital content rights are bought and sold totally independent of search. It would be a monumental shift that would reshape the entire online economy. And after this week, that's a future that just became a real possibility.